Great to see your face here on the Rich Eisen Show. Last night, we talked about it at the top of the show. The Lakers are done. All the questions that arise out of this, just break down the totality of what the Lakers are facing right now with the future of LeBron, the future of Darvin Ham, the future of that entire team.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me on. Well, it's a LeBron offseason, which is usually filled with as much or more drama than the regular season. He has an option to come back and play for the Lakers next season. I know that's what that sort of made that question at the post-game presser mandatory. You have to at least say, try to test what the guy is thinking. And but he's going to use that for leverage. He'll try to improve the roster, make sure that gets done. I would imagine if he's unhappy with Darvin Ham, we'll see a change there. If he's happy with Darvin Ham, then then you keep the coach. But he's at a point in his career where he's not going to. He's not going to wait for things to happen. He's going to use his leverage to make things happen. And he's always been able to do it before. No reason now, heading towards 40, that would change.
Where would he go, Ash? If it's not the Lakers, and if he decides at age 39 going on 40, he wants to continue to play, where else, if anywhere, would even make sense, and would it be doable for LeBron to go there?
Well, if he were to leave, I think the smoothest PR landing he would have would be to go back to Cleveland. If Donovan Mitchell wants out of there and LeBron could go back in there, and that is his team, his franchise, essentially. It's not seen when he goes, when he went to Cleveland the last time, he was returning home. And it would be, I think, looked at that again the same way. It wouldn't be he's out, stalking one more ring. So that would be, and it could make some sense. I'm not paying any attention or any mind here to all the numbers and what would have to happen payroll-wise and this and that. But as far as him going somewhere, I heard it suggested on radio this morning that Philadelphia to go play with Joel Embiid might make sense if there was a way for the Lakers to get some fair return or at least some future by moving LeBron that way. Or if LeBron just signed, outright, I think Philadelphia could have enough money to satisfy that need. So if he just didn't exercise his player option and went to a place like Philadelphia, has he played with a big the caliber of Joel Embiid, another MVP? But I think other than that, you could see him in a Golden State or Dallas or somewhere like that. But I think it would be looked at a little bit like Kevin Durant's move to Golden State was. Now, Golden State is not the same team it was that Kevin Durant jumped onto. But nonetheless, for LeBron to roll the dice on one of 30 or one of 29 other franchises and think that's where he's going to get his ring, I think there needs to be more to it than that.
So the Lakers and LeBron, decisions to make there. There's also decisions to make in Phoenix. They build a team that's around Kevin Durant and bringing in Bradley Beal, and obviously you've got Devin Booker there, to get swept and not even be particularly competitive, Ash, in a lot of that series against the Timberwolves. You look at the way that their salary is set up here and the money that they've got committed. Where do the Suns go from here in this offseason?
Well, and the lack of draft capital, right. the inability to improve and bring in some affordable contracts. It's a mess. They were built badly. It was sort of an old school kind of a build. It reminded me of the first year of the Miami Heat super team, where they brought those guys in, but they really weren't prepared to pay for that right away. And so they ended up with a very thin bench, complementary players that didn't really complement, and they got the 3 stars in the door. But I think they had more maneuverability in Miami to flesh out that roster in the coming years. They made it to the finals that first year and then got beat by Dallas. And then they won a couple of championships after that. Dwayne Wade took a step back. and there was not that sort of fight for supremacy with the ball. Phoenix was just an old model, I think. I think they were reaching for something that didn't make sense even on paper if you looked at those three stars. I mean, Devin Booker, even, Durant and Beal were saying, he's got to be the guy. He's our alpha. And Durant obviously is still a potent scorer, dangerous player, tough matchup. That made sense. But Bradley Beal, after the injuries he'd had, after the sort of a one-dimensional career that he's had, it didn't fit well. And certainly his salary, what's owed to him on his contract, does not fit well. Not having a point guard, it still matters. They talk about this as positionless, the positionless era, and we're supposed to pick all NBA teams that way. Well, you know what? Point guards do matter. If you think of that roster with Chris Paul on it, as opposed to Beal or Booker trying to bring the ball up and organize the offense, and you do need somebody to say no, as they like to say, to guys who are not as open or ready to receive the ball as they think they are. I just think that was bad roster construction, and Frank Vogel or somebody else might pay a price for that, but it really was a front office gaffe the way they built that team.
Steve Aschburner is with us, senior writer for NBA.com. Ash, the last time the Timberwolves won a playoff series, I was a part-timer at KFAN Radio in Minneapolis going to those games. They were facing the Kings and the Nuggets. That's 20 years ago. I believe you might have still been on the Star Tribune beat at that point, or you at least covered the team in that era. I mean, it has been forever since the Timberwolves were a relevant basketball team. But gosh, you watch them in that opening round game series against the Suns. You watch Anthony Edwards almost single-handedly close them out in Game 4. It seems like this is real. It seems like the way that they've put together that team, you talk roster construction and all the questions when they made the big trade for Rudy Gobert and how are he and Karl Anthony Towns going to coexist. It's working right now, and they've got some of the bright young stars in this league.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a fun story. I was on the beat back in 2004 when they won their only two playoff series and then got beat in the Western Conference Finals. Until 2 nights ago, I was the only Minneapolis beat writer who had ever covered that team and had seen them win a series. So I've suddenly got more company, and that's good. Things change. I mean, I think that Rudy Gobert trade was properly criticized last year because of, we got it, the period of adjustment and all, but whether you could make that work, in today's game. And the jury was out until this season, and they did make it work. So, kudos to them. They changed the narrative on that. They took a negative and made it into a positive. Karl Anthony Towns has accepted, and I'm not sure he had a ton of choice in this, but he accepted a role that's different from being the dominant, low post, offensive minded big. He's more of a complementary player now to open things up and to exploit some mismatches. Gobert's defense has proven real. There are a lot of Victor Wembanyama backers who want him to immediately get the Defensive Player of the Year award, and I don't see that happening. I think Rudy Gobert is going to win his fourth. His impact, his reputation dissuades a lot of guys from even going into the paint. And that's can be as effective as swatting a shot. So, and Anthony Edwards, I mean, he's taken step by step. I think he still needs, some maturity, but he's 22. He hasn't been as consistent. He certainly wasn't during the regular season. He didn't crack my MVP ballot because of that, but he's right on the fringes, 6th, 7th. He's got all the skills. And he's got, I think, the will and the personality to, be a real assassin out there. Great nature with media, and the Timberwolves. And this happened before Tim Connolly and the current regime, but they drafted him number 1, and it was a very prescient pick.
In classic T-Wolves fashion, there's always got to be some drama. I don't think many fans even have a concept of who actually owns the team at this point. I mean, you've been around long enough that you remember when Glenn Taylor rescued the Timberwolves. Harv and Marv were selling them down the river. They were going to move to New Orleans, and somehow Glenn ends up keeping them around. Now, this has happened several times where he's pulled the plug on a deal at certain points. This one with Mark Lowry and A-Rod seems so far down the road, and then all of a sudden there's this terse two-paragraph statement of they blew it, they missed the deadline, I still own the team. You know Glenn. You know what makes him tick. How does this entire drama end?
I think ultimately, and now I know there's an arbitration process in place, and so that supposedly is going to have the final word. I still somehow can't see this getting resolved without intervention from the league. I do know Glenn. In fact, when he saved the Timberwolves from moving to New Orleans, he did it at just the right time because it looked like they were gone. I was covering that team. I went down to New Orleans to write several stories about the NBA returning to New Orleans, and I met my wife, the woman who would become my wife. And so instead of the team going all the way down the Mississippi, I brought her up the Mississippi to Minneapolis. And had that deal never been flirted with, or if it had gone through more smoothly, that wouldn't have happened. So, I do owe a debt of gratitude to that aborted transaction. This one, look, Glenn Taylor is an affable fellow. He comes across as this unexpected, accidental billionaire from Mankato, Minnesota. He is a tough businessman, and I've got to think that he's got a fleet of attorneys that have combed through the documents and found loopholes that he believes will keep that team in his hands. I think it's driven by the change in the valuation of that team since that agreement was entered into. It's allegedly doubled in value, and he's locked into 2021 prices. And I think it's also related to the fact that the team's doing well now, and he has bankrolled that team for a long time, 20 years in between playoff series victories. And at 83, he wants to enjoy some of this. Now, why these guys, can't work out a deal between them, I don't know. I understand. I mean, it's high finance and it's above my pay grade. For a lot of us, I mean, it's just buy popcorn and see multimillionaires or billionaires going against multi-millionaires and billionaires. I don't have an emotional favorite in this thing. A deal's a deal, and yet there were clauses in there that there were certain deadlines that had to be met. I hear things on both sides. I don't think it's trickling down into the locker room or even the coaching ranks. I think that's so separate and for next season or beyond that it's not going to interfere with this postseason run. And then we'll see. I mean, we'll see in terms of what this team, based on where it finishes, has to do around the edges to improve, maybe go a step further. Maybe they won't have to go a step further. Maybe they'll be looking at defending and repeating.
Timberwolves Nuggets going to be a great series in the second round. That opens up on Saturday. Before we let you go, Ash, Eastern Conference right now, Porzingis gets knocked up. That would be a real story. Gets nicked up last night. I got caught between a couple of different words right there. Porzingis nicked up in that game. That one's going to make the rounds on social media. When you look at the East right now, if Porzingis has to miss any significant time, how does that, in your mind, impact the landscape of the East?
Well, I mean, the definition is significant. First of all, they have to put Miami down. I think Miami represents probably their biggest test over the next potential two series. I think that if they're playing the 4 or 5 winner, Cleveland or Orlando, and then ultimately the Knicks or the Pacers, then I think Boston would be in decent shape. I think they could beat those teams even if Porzingis was not available to them. Once you get into a final situation, whether it's Denver, Minnesota, I think that would be a real problem. So he's on the clock. He basically has until June 6th, which I believe is the start of the finals, to mend from this. And, that's, what is that, about 5 weeks? So, it's possible. I don't know the degree of the injury, but that's not as dire or urgent as needing him. Now, if Miami somehow gets back in this and stirs the ghosts from last spring, that could be a problem. But I think if Boston closes out the Heat, it won't be a crippling injury for the next 2 rounds.
Ash, you're the best. I had never heard that story about how you met your wife. Glad that unlike Glenn Taylor, she didn't get all the way back there and then decide, you know what, deal's off. So thank you very much, man.
One of the previous co-owners, the guy that wanted to sell the team down there, when he found out what happened, he bought us the nicest wedding gift we got. Because I thanked him for that aborted move.
What was it?
Oh, it was this really nice silver platter that's stored away and you never use because you never had that kind of a party. But it was a nice gift, though. It was, top of the line, Tiffany or something.
Ash, thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Tom.
That's Steve Aschburner, NBA.com. I had no clue when I asked that question where we were going. That's one of the best stories.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.